Welcome everyone. I'm Tim from here at the Tibetan Buddhist Society. I work in IT and I've been involved with the centre here for a long time, about 35 years or so on. But I'm a slow learner, so don't worry about that. So the format for these first four sessions that I'm leading, we'll do some meditation, then talk and some meditation. So try and get a bit of experience in meditation. I try not to talk too much, and feel free to tell me if I do. And then some question and answer if need be. So we're here at the traditional Tibetan temple. And it's a very colourful place, very peaceful, beautiful temple. And it's got representation of all the various lineage holders from Shakyamuni Buddha, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, the big golden statue behind me for anyone who online perhaps he doesn't know. And through to, there's paintings around the hall that you probably can't see. Of the various lineage holders, coming down to Geshe Charity Loden, the photo, our spiritual head behind me. And he passed away in 2011, but we were very lucky to have him in Melbourne since 1979, and an extraordinarily wonderful teacher. And also you can see photos of His Holiness the Dalai Lama behind me. So also in the temple there's the Kangyo, which is the collection to my right, up the top, of all the Buddha's teachings, all the sutras and tantras and so on. And the Tengyo, which is the great Indian masters' commentaries. So this huge lineage of wisdom from the last 2,500 years in this temple. And on top of that there's the book we'll be focusing on for this series is this Essence of the Path to Enlightenment. So the Path to Enlightenment tradition arose with Atisha in the 11th century, and Lama Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelug tradition, which we're part, he wrote 3 expanded Path to Enlightenment texts, and then our teacher Geshe Charity Loden, in Tsongkhapa's footsteps, wrote an extensive, medium and this condensed Essence of the Path to Enlightenment. So the idea of this book is that it's graduated. It puts the easier teachings first, and then the foundation teachings at the beginning, and then step by step you go through. But it's the sort of essential practical teachings of the Buddha, and the Buddha taught for more than 30 years, and then there's all these huge commentaries, so there's huge massive information, and that's all being condensed by Geshe Charity Loden into pretty much, it's about sort of 12 subjects, and they're regarded as the really critical things we need to take on board to transform our minds from our ordinary sort of experience to, and this thing called enlightenment, but the Buddhists talk about as enlightenment, which we'll go into a bit later in the series. So the first 4 weeks I'll be looking at the first part of the book, and it's the foundation teachings to develop a peaceful and stable mind, and to gain a framework, an understanding of our life and the world that is highly motivating, recognizing this is a precious situation, that it's not going to last, what our potential is, and so on. So that's the idea of the initial part of the book. And then the latter part of the book looks at the more, it's called the Bodhisattva Actions, Transcendent Actions, to developing the full, the complete good-hearted approach to life and to others, and developing one's wisdom, that so we actually can understand the nature of reality and the nature of oneself at its most profound, deepest level. So, fortunately for me, I don't have to go into any of that. We'll be looking at the foundation teachings, which we all require. So the temple's surrounded by there's lots of religious imagery and so on. But the main thing, I think one important thing to realise when listening to Buddhist teachings or practicing meditation, what you're trying to do is a completely natural thing. You're trying to transform your mind through its realize its natural potential, trying to grow naturally. We're not trying to, some people think of religion as being like artificial, completely artificial, divorced from nature. But the whole point of meditation and understanding these teachings is to really find the best within ourselves that's naturally there. So I just wanted to mention that. And there's, yeah. Okay, so I said we'll start off with some meditation. So we'll start with just a very simple meditation. There's thousands of meditations, and some are very useful. This one's particularly useful as a beginning for all meditations, just simply observing the breath. So for people new to Buddhism, then we tend to sit ideally with your back reasonably straight, whether you're in a chair or sitting cross-legged. The idea is that you sit reasonably straight, and we tend to put our right hand in the left hand and the thumbs meeting like that. That's a mudra of concentration. It just gives you an indication if you've fallen asleep, because your thumbs go over before you fall off the chair or off the cushion. So the idea is to relax the body. You can have your head tilted very, very slightly forward, and you can have your eyes slightly open but unfocused, or you can close your eyes. It's completely up to you, whatever's most comfortable. And so the first thing is letting go of any preoccupation, any tension, any worries. And we can do that with the out-breath. So as you breathe out and just letting go, you feel any tension in your body. Just feel it drifting away with the out-breath. If you have any worries or preoccupations at the moment, then just letting them go. In meditation, we just focus on the meditation. We can start to enjoy the natural peace within us. And at the start of meditation, in Buddhism we try to generate a good motivation, because the motivation determines the outcome. So for example, we can think, through training my mind to become more peaceful, it'll be easier to live with. And so it'll be a benefit to everyone I encounter in life. So we can use that as a motivation. And then we can practice focusing on the sensation of the breath. So without changing your breathing, identify the sensation of the air as it enters and leaves your nostrils. Or if you prefer, the sensation in your tummy, in the abdomen, as you breathe. And we decide that's the meditation object. And to help initially, we can count one in-breath and one out-breath as one. The second in-breath, second out-breath is two. And counting through to 10 and starting back at 1 again. But the main focus of your attention is the sensation of the breath. So find the object. And don't try too hard, because it will make your mind more agitated. But don't be too slack either. So you have to find within yourself the right balance, focus. Just lightly observing the breath. If your mind becomes distracted, just note whatever thought it is, doesn't matter what it is, just note it as a distraction and bring your mind back to the breath. Let it go. known as the yoga of relaxation, or an inner holiday, an internal holiday, as we have a holiday from too much thinking. And we can finish the meditation. So, in this course, we'll do a range of meditations, but like I say, just focusing on the breath is completely natural, doesn't require any religious beliefs, just oneself and one's own attention, and it's useful for subduing the mind in any situation. It's very useful at the start of any meditation, so you can focus on the other subject. First of all, you just focus on the breath, and it settles us down a bit. So there's a range, for people new to Buddhism, there'll be a range of ideas presented in this text. And I'd like to quote from the Buddha in Geshe's more extensive path to enlightenment. He said, monks and scholars should well analyze my words, as gold is tested by melting, cutting and rubbing, and then adopt them, but not for the sake of showing me respect. So, from Buddhist viewpoint, particularly Tibetan Buddhist viewpoint, being skeptical is a good thing. Not to accept, the advice from the Buddha is don't accept what I'm saying. Don't accept what I'm saying. Check it out. So no matter how charismatic a teacher, no matter how exotic the idea, or whether it appeals to our sort of subconscious bias, whatever, the advice from the Buddha is check it out, both through testing it like gold in India. If someone wanted to sell you some gold, you test it by rubbing it. There's 3 tests: rub it, cut it, and burn it. Excuse me. Then you'd know it was gold. Then it was up to you if you wanted to buy the gold. And so the Buddha said apply the same sorts of tests, and particularly using our analytical wisdom, using our intelligence as a key part of the path to enlightenment. It's a sort of essential thing. You have to rely on your own wisdom rather than what's been told. So for me, when I first encountered Buddhism, I really liked that. And the fact that Tibetans love debate. It doesn't matter what someone says, you can pull it to bits, you can tell them it's rubbish, you can, so that sort of freedom of mind to investigate is a central part of Tibetan tradition. And that it's only through really working things out for oneself that we'll ever engage in any serious meditation practice or alter our behaviour and so on. It's if we really understand things ourselves rather than being told. So, yeah. So Geshe, our spiritual head, used to ask, why are you coming here today? Or why are we attending online today? And so it can be lots of reasons. There can be nothing on television, nothing decent, there's no footy match on, or trying to escape the family for a couple of hours. Can be sort of for health reasons, or wanting to learn to relax, or genuine interest in sort of Buddhist philosophy, the different presentation of the path or presentation of the nature of reality. Can be you've heard the Dalai Lama and you liked how he sounded. Lots of different reasons, but all the reasons are the same underneath, in that we are all seeking happiness. So again, I'll quote from the Essence of the Path, a quote from the first Panchen Lama. Panchen was Chukyi Gyaltsen. He said, no one desires even the slightest suffering, nor is ever content with the happiness he has, as there's no difference between myself and others. Bless me to rejoice in the happiness of others. So that third line, as there's no difference between myself and others, that's pretty powerful line in these days where there's so much division and sort of really divisive talk on social media and different nations sort of encouraging hyper-nationalism and sort of lack of compassion. And the first pension sign is saying, underneath, there's no difference between myself and the person there. So bless me to rejoice in all their happiness. I mean, what sort of message is that? The world is just crying out for that message at the moment. I think, it's just an essential message. But anyway, I want to focus on the first two lines. That's nobody desires even the slightest suffering, or is ever content with the happiness they have. So that motivates us for coming here today. We don't want suffering, we're trying to avoid suffering, and we're not content with the amount of happiness we have. And it motivates all of our decisions, almost all of our actions we do. From the tiniest thing, sort of stretching, because it's uncomfortable, I want a more comfortable experience, scratching, adjusting tying your shoes up. You do them too tight, it's uncomfortable. Too loose, they fall off, it's a hassle. So if you looked at your own day, all the actions you do through the day, where did I sit? How did I sit down? How did I travel? Where did I go? What did I have for breakfast? How much sugar did I put in my tea? Half a teaspoon, 3/4 of it. Trying to maximize happiness or overcome suffering. And it's just, it drives everyone, animals, humans, everyone, of being this fundamental thing we're in pursuit of. And it's said to be one of the actions of our Buddha nature or our potential is this pursuit for peace. It's so this fundamental wish we've got underneath. And it drives us our whole day, a whole year, whole life. It's always going. And it drives the big decisions and little decisions like the ones I've mentioned, and big decisions like what you might study, what career you have, whether you marry, whether you get divorced, and so on and so on and so on. And if you're losing your hair, then do you shave it all off, or do you go for the comb over, or do you buy a toupee? They're really big decisions in life, things like that. So that's what drives us, and even things we find unpleasant. Like people in Ukraine right now. They might be fighting for their lives. It's extremely unpleasant, their decision, but on the balance, they're trying to, in pursuit of happiness and overcome suffering. Or, for a more mundane example, you decide to go to the dentist, or you don't get on with your in-laws, but you go at Christmas time, just to keep the peace, even though it always ends up in a fight. Then, so even things we might not find pleasant, we do because long term we think going to the dentist is going to be beneficial. So it drives us these things. So you would expect, like all of humanity is doing this, and look at how intelligent humanity is. We got a COVID virus, and straight away there's about 10 vaccines. We've got these incredible devices that will suck up all the knowledge of the universe, or at least planet Earth, and present it to us. We've created AI and robots and autonomous killing machines now these days, and so humans are incredibly intelligent. But and we've got this underlying wish, we've always had it, it's been driving us all. You think, well, we would then be in a state of peace. We would have gained happiness. It's it's a no-brainer. With so much intelligence directed so intently, the world will be peaceful, will be joyful. would have worked it out. But unfortunately, we can ask, well, what actually happened? And the same as when the Buddha was teaching 2,500 years ago, his first teaching was the first turning of the wheel of the Four Noble Truths in Sarnath. And the first part of that is the truth of suffering, or true suffering. And it is that our lives are conditioned by suffering. And the reason for that is because, well, I won't go into the reason for that. So so Buddhism isn't escapism. Meditation's not about just trying to, reality's horrible over here, but I'm just going to drift off and be in the clouds and just focus on the breath. It's not being an ostrich, sticking your head in the sand. The Buddha didn't recommend becoming an ostrich, you know. He said, look at reality, look at the world, look at your lives, look at it and see the truth of suffering. Then you'll be motivated to fix it. So he gave a lot, the teachings on the truth of suffering and the path to enlightenment. There's 8 categories and 6 categories and 3 categories. So I won't go into all of them, so we don't get too depressed. But I'll briefly mention the 8 categories. So first of all is birth. We experience suffering at birth. And even in the womb, you've got 9 months in the womb, and you've got no window, you've got no door, you've got no electricity, you can't turn the light on. The music's always the same, it's just boom, 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 boom. 9 months. You can't turn over, you can't do anything, you can't get onto Facebook, you can't turn on the TV. So, and you just have to cop it. If your mother goes for a jog, you're bouncing around. If she has cigarettes or alcohol, goes straight into you. You know, hot chili, and you probably, I don't know, but you probably start getting the curry experience. And and then coming out of the womb is a massive transition. Obviously, it's a huge amount of pressure suddenly applied to your body. Then you're out from this 37 degrees of liquid environment, and you're, in the old days, hung upside down and given a whack on the back and welcome to the world, you know. Gee, this is a nice place. So the suffering of birth, everyone experiences the suffering of birth. We're extremely fragile. I work in a hospital, and you see the newlyborns in the incubators. They're just so tiny. It's really incredibly fragile. So second is the suffering of sickness. And no one wants to be sick, but we all get sick. We get colds, we get flu. Some people get every sickness you can imagine, you know, through to cancers, strokes, heart attacks. Now epidemics, you know, COVID, and the news this week, now Japanese encephalitis because of the floods is a problem in Queensland, New South Wales and in Victoria, a new sort of tropical contagious disease spread by mosquitoes. So yeah, we experience this. No one wants to be sick. When you're really sick, you can't enjoy your normal enjoyments. Normally you think, I like listening to music, I like eating almond croissants, but if you're really sick, it's disgusting. You don't want to hear music, you've got a cracking headache, you don't want to eat an almond croissant, you can't bear the thought. Going on holiday would be an absolute nightmare. You just want to lie there and whimper in a fetal position, because we're feeling so bad. So no one wants sickness, but we experience that throughout life. And old age, aging. No one wants to age, but our cells are aging as soon as through cell replication. Pretty much from birth and even before birth, every time your cell replicates, they're gradually aging. So we've got the same DNA, but it starts to fall apart a bit. And so that's why we start to look old rather than young. But aging's a problem because we lose our capacity. You know, really, we can't run like we used to. We can't. We go for a run, and our arms are pumping up and down, and we think we're doing really well, then someone walks past us. It's embarrassing. And the same when we're swimming, we're thrashing away, and a 10-year-old goes past like a fish. And so gradually we lose our physical capacity, or mental capacity tends to decline as well. We can't see so clearly, we can't hear, everyone's heard the comic conversations with someone who's losing their hearing. And you say, what do you say? And then they completely misunderstand, and the next sentence misunderstand. So that's aging. No one really wants to age, but it's a natural process we can't avoid. And then death is from a Buddhist viewpoint, the most significant event in our life, because it starts the transition to the next life, and it's a very important time. We don't want to die, because I'll be separated from everyone I love. I'll be separated from everything I'm comfortable with, my role, my position, this body, my sense of who I am, Tim, like this, is all gone at the time of death. And the Buddha taught it's a certainty, no one escapes it, and the time is completely uncertain. As we've just seen with Rod Marsh and Shane Warne, larger than life characters, exceptional in their fields, very good lives, presumably pretty wealthy, and then suddenly everything taken away in just heart stopped, all that's gone. So that's a suffering experience. We don't really want to be separated from everyone we love and so on. Then the next 4 categories, one's called meeting the unpleasant. So in life, we have no choice, we meet unpleasant experiences. Like first thing in the morning, you jump out of bed, you run to the shower, you see yourself in the mirror. Gee, that's called meeting the unpleasant, that's a shock. You're in the shower, like you're in the shower here, and then someone runs hot water in the kitchen, suddenly it goes cold. That's meeting the unpleasant, like mundane, or, at work, your boss is shouting at you or demanding, really putting the pressure on, or you get retrenched, or difficulties at home in the relationship, whatever, car crash. But particularly we can see, in Ukraine at the moment, no one wishes to meet the unpleasantness of war. It's just unimaginably bad transition of Ukrainians' lives due to one person's decision, basically. So this meeting the unpleasant is part of samsara, and and the floods in Queensland's another example. No one wishes their house to be washed away, the car to be washed away, or a relative to be killed in floods. The animals don't wish to be drowned in the fields. But again, that's part of life. Then next one, being separated from what we find pleasant. So again, the end of the weekend, the weekend's pleasant, then we have to go back to work, or the end of the holiday, or the end of a relationship, or your marriage breaks down. It's a separation from what we find pleasant. That's a suffering experience. We have to adjust our minds to accommodate. And a peaceful life in Ukraine, or a beautiful environment in Queensland is we don't want to be separated, but forced to be separated from it. Then the next category is not achieving our wishes. So through life, we don't always get what we want. We might study, we don't get the marks we need to go to that university. We might try for that job, but someone else gets that job. We might want a relationship, we don't get it. We might want, a bigger house, more wealth, then the stock market crashes, the world economy changes. We don't always get what we aspire towards, so we get frustrated. And then on top of that, when we do get what we want, we get bored with it. We get the new, you know, the iPhone 8 was so fantastic when you got the iPhone 8. But now it's 12 or 13. This looks like a bit of junk compared to what the next person's got. Or the car starts to, when we first get the BMW, we just can't stop looking at it, you know. That's my car, it's so special. And then you gradually get a few little chips and, you know, there's newer models come out and it starts to look dated and it loses that allure. So these are some of the suffering experiences the Buddha talked about. And on top of that, there's all our mental things like loneliness. Like so many of us experience loneliness. Some people live alone and they're not lonely. Some people live in families, they're lonely. Some people live as a couple and they're lonely. So loneliness is, it sort of affects many people. And they say it's increasing in our sort of Western lifestyle now, and sort of disconnection from people, from interactions, and with all this online stuff. Then things like dissatisfaction, and worry, and depression, and so on and so on. So that's as much as I'll say about the truth of suffering, because people start to get depressed if you go on too long in an introductory course. But as I said, the Buddha said we need to know this because we need to know what's the cause, and then we need to remedy the cause. So despite all our intelligence, we have these experiences through life that we don't want. And so we can say, well, so how do we try and seek happiness? You know, how do you try and seek happiness? What do you do? And it depends. People give all sorts of different replies, and it depends on the person. Like Jeff Bezos, is he Amazon? Is he Amazon? So he builds spaceships that looks like a particular male appendage. I don't know if you've seen the spaceships. He thinks that's going to make him happy. You know, really peculiar things. Or a dictator, you know, an authoritarian dictator will, if I kill these journalists, if I, kill these human rights activists or whatever, if I threaten this country or invade this country, that's going to be a cause of happiness. Underlying it, there's that drive. I think they're doing something good, creating incredible misery, oppressing people, and that's going to be a cause of happiness. But more mundanely, what do we normally do? And speaking for myself, I try to get lots of salt and fat and sugar into my bloodstream. That's going to be a cause of happiness. So you go down to the movie and you buy your 3 gallons of Coke and your huge bin full of popcorn and scoff, non-stop. Or you buy family-sized bars of chocolate or family-sized bars of chips and scoff. Or we buy a new television, we buy a new lounge suite, bigger house, or we buy ourselves a nice holiday. We listen to some music, we go and meet friends. All these things we're trying to do to get our happiness. We go and play some sport or whatever. Go and climb a mountain. Or we change our partner. We look for someone slightly less pear-shaped. That'll be a cause of happiness. So all of those things that I've mentioned, from Jeff Bezos through to things we might do, they're all external. And the Buddha sort of asked the key question, where does happiness and suffering live? Where does it actually live? And it lives inside. So we're looking continuously, putting all our energy outside, but the key and the main cause of happiness and suffering from a Buddhist viewpoint is inside. And that's the one of the, sort of, I suppose, a really fundamental part of the Buddhist teaching. That's a really key thing. Because we always, even though we've heard this for 20 years, we always, as soon as someone does something to upset us, you did that to upset me. Immediately we don't realise the key cause is inside. And the way we can see that is look at yourself on different days. One day you're in the car, in traffic, and you're pretty cool with it. Another day you're in the car with traffic that's driving you nuts. One day you're with your partner and everything's happy. Next day you're grumpy, you're bored. Same situation, pretty much the same things going on. Well, we look at ourselves and another person in the same situation. I might sit in traffic and be very upset, but the passenger's sitting in traffic and it's no problem. I might be getting very upset because someone's shouted at me, criticised me, saying you're stupid, you're selfish, you make me want to vomit just the sight of you. And then someone more peaceful or with more patience, like Eshla, an accomplished practitioner, it's just words, it's nothing. They still have compassion for that person. It's absolutely not affecting their fundamental compassion for that person. So again, it's coming from my mind, the reason I'm getting so upset. And we see it with extremely wealthy people who can be miserable. And there's no shortage of examples, from sort of Prince Charles and Lady Diana, sort of suicide attempts and so on, to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, what they go through, or some of these billionaires. They don't look the most sort of peaceful, happy people. And then you can meet, if you go travelling, you can meet people who've just got enough to live on, but really a joyful family experience, really good heart-to-heart communication. So again, the root cause from Buddhism is within. So I'm going to, what time? Yeah, okay. Just trying to keep track of the time. So again, like the Buddha said, our mind is our creator. The mind is the creator of our universe. We'll look a bit more at that in the section on karma. But our mind creates our life and our world. And it can create a hellish experience, like Putin's just created in Ukraine, or it can create a heavenly experience. And it's all coming from our habits and our decisions and our choices and the way our minds work. So, I must admit, when I first came to Australia, I come from the UK, it just looked such a wonderful country. The city's wide streets, beautiful trees, beaches everywhere. I sort of couldn't believe that there was the same inner city sort of problems of violence and domestic abuse and so on in Australia that you'd see in a more tougher environment, like say in Birmingham in the UK. Or initially that quite surprised me, that there's the same level of alcoholism and drug addiction and abuse and so on and so on. So again, all coming from the mind, So yeah. So the bad news about that is that we have to take responsibility for our experiences as Buddhists. And again, we get to do this all the time. We're always annoyed with others, but we have to, if we actually adopt these teachings, we have to take responsibility for our experiences, good and bad, and how we're engaging with others and how we're seeing others. And also, but the good news is it gives us control over our life and the world we see. Once we start to look in and see how our own mind's working and what sort of world it's creating. So how does it sort of work? The Buddha talked about us having a mind stream. So a mind stream is just moment after moment of consciousness or awareness, moment after moment after moment after moment. There's always something appearing to your mind. Can be a sound, can be a sight, can be different thoughts. There's moment after moment of consciousness, like a stream. It's actually a never-ending stream. It has no beginning. Didn't begin at the start of this life. Didn't begin at the start of previous life. Beginningless stream of consciousness, and it will never end. Can never end. Your mind, you, will never end. From Buddha's, that's the Buddha's teaching. So consciousness doesn't end. So for new people here, in Buddhism, the mind, you've got to separate the concept of mind from the brain. So the brain is a consciousness itself, is not physical. It's simply clarity and awareness, clear and known. Or another good definition of consciousness is that annoying time between naps. But no, the Buddhist definition of consciousness is a phenomenon which has clarity and knows things. So a computer, like the brain, can do trillions of processes a second. It has no awareness, no consciousness, no experience. It can do unbelievable number of computations, faster than we can these days. Doesn't know anything. Doesn't experience anything. Even if you build it into a robot, it looks exactly like a human, behaves exactly like a human, AI, it still has no experience, awareness, consciousness. It's just an electrical process. That's Buddhist view. Although the Buddha AI wasn't around, but when the Buddha was there, so you can honestly say the Buddha talked about AI, but that consciousness can't be created. The main cause of consciousness is your previous moment. So anyway, yeah, we've got this mind stream. We've got this thing full of stuff, the mind chugging away, and some of it, the way we apprehend the world and apprehend others, is problematic, and some of it is useful. And that's, you can categorize it into sort of negative and positive states of mind, or wholesome and unwholesome minds, or afflicted and non-afflicted minds, and so on. Yeah, our mind is continuously creating. So, we'll talk a little bit about negative states of mind. Like I said, afflicted mind. Another word that's used for them, often in the path of enlightenment, is delusions. And the delusions, definition of delusion, is it always causes your mind to become unpeaceful or agitated, or it's a cause of suffering. So, Shantideva, a great 8th century Indian saint, Indian Bodhisattva, wrote this really remarkable book, Engaging the Bodhisattva Deeds. And just verse after verse of really beautiful wisdom for life. And he said one verse was, they're wishing to be free of suffering. They run towards suffering itself. They're wishing for happiness. Like an enemy, they ignorantly destroy it. So that's a good definition of delusions. We're all running towards suffering. So we're all joggers. We're all doing ultra marathons. We're jogging towards suffering and destroying our own happiness. And we say, well, that's ridiculous. I don't do that. Why in the world would I do that? I want to be happy. That's absurd. But through our deluded way of engaging the world and engaging others and thinking about ourselves, we create our own misery. And we can see that if you look back at your own life, how many times have you worried in your life? by too much worry, tension in the stomach, and mind agitated, maybe can't sleep, don't really enjoy food because I'm worrying. The mind's creating from a situation, and worry is probably not resolving anything. You're not problem solving. We're just obsessing about something. I'm worried I'm going to lose my job. I'm worried my partner's going to run away. I'm worried about, I've got cancer. I'm worried about this, worried about that. So making that quite a big chunk, certainly a big chunk of my life, making miserable through worry. And then we look at how often have you been bored? How often have you been dissatisfied? Your mind says, I can't completely enjoy this situation and be at peace because I need to fix this, I need to do this, or I need to get that. Your mind saying, I'm unable to be peaceful, I'm unable to be happy unless the situation is other than how it is. And the Buddha said that's one of the key sufferings in samsara, the mind of dissatisfaction, the mind that says whatever it is must be other than how it is. I can't be happy, it must be other than how it is. We go through our whole life chasing this, chasing that. Got to fix that, got to do that, got to do that, got to get bigger, got to get more money. And so never ever experience peace. And the Buddha said someone who has contentment is truly rich. They experience a wealth that we don't experience because we have that fundamental unsatisfactory experience. So lots of things like that. So being bored, being dissatisfied, being grumpy, being angry, being upset, being jealous, being depressed, being lonely, and so on and so on. It's sort of quite unusual to be just full of joy and peaceful. Normally, our experiences are suboptimal. And according to Shantideva, that's us, our minds running towards suffering. We've managed to, on this beautiful blue planet, this paradise, this wonderful human form, we managed to take all this and say, oh God, I'm bored. or just everyone we meet is unique and different. That's the truth, isn't it? Everyone looks different. Everyone's personality is different. But no, same old, same old blah, 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 same old blah, blah, blah. And we miss all of that. We manage to run towards suffering. We engage the world and make it, So, and all the sort of egotism and the pride and competition and domination games that go on, the sort of subliminal games that go on in interpersonal relationships as well. So we can look at, like I mentioned, Prince Charles and Prince Harry and Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. Look at Donald Trump, does he look happy? Look at Epstein and whatever, Prince Andrew, that's the mind jogging towards suffering. So that's, as well as the experience, it also reinforces, we create what's called a karmic seed and a habit of thinking that way. So with in neuroscience, they talk about brain plasticity. If you engage a certain way of thinking again and again and again, it makes that pathway happen more easily. You basically make a freeway in your brain for particular thoughts or particular ways to engage. So, and the problem with delusions is they don't come with a flag saying, I'm a delusion. They don't come with an identifier saying, I'm running to suffering. Being angry is making me miserable. They just come up with a really convincing take on a situation saying, that person hurt me, they deserve to suffer, I'm going to shout at them. They're really convincing scene. And I'm going to shout at them, going to shout at me, they're going to hit me, I'm going to hit them. And it's very convincing saying this has to happen. It's not saying this is a delusion, you are running to suffering. There's no identifier there. So identifying delusions is a big part of the path of enlightenment in oneself, because they're pretty sneaky. And yeah. So I guess for all, as you say, we have too much superstition, too much projection, too much imagination. And in psychological terms, there's lots of terms in modern psychology. They talk about catastrophizing. So we make something bigger than it is. We get a headache. We think we've got a brain tumor, you know, or if the boss doesn't say hello, we start to worry we're going to lose our job. You know, it's catastrophizing, it's making it bigger. Other things, like say confirmation bias. So that's where you only take in data from the world that reinforces what you believe. You know, so from all the news in the world, you take out the bit that says, yes, Russians have been threatened by Ukraine and so on, and you want to believe that and you enforce it. Or whatever, if you feel bad about yourself, then you only recognise the things where you failed. You don't recognise where you've succeeded. It's confirmation bias. You only see the things that your mind wants to see. And I say Facebook's an echo chamber. You get people who think alike, and they have the same thoughts. They echo what your thoughts are back to you. You think, yeah, this is the world, this is reality. And you get it's even worse in some of these regimes where there's no free press. Then there is only one line, the official line, being rammed down your throat. So as well as your own echo chamber that we all have, you're getting it rammed down. You're not getting a variety of views. So it gets even harder to see things how they are. So, yeah, that confirmation bias, we don't recognise we do it, but we do it. Then there's things like extrapolating a generality from one instance. So if someone of a particular race hurt me, maybe attacked me, then I've got a bad view about that race. It's a sort of subconscious bias occurs. So there's lots of things like that, and particularly the me-centric type of things, where the world's all about me, you know, like that person didn't come because I'm here, or those people are laughing at me, or in fact they're not even aware of you, or the neighbours playing their music to annoy me. So these are delusions, and they cause us suffering. They run into us suffering. So the alternative, so part of the path is to try to identify this in ourselves and overcome it. And the preferred direction that the Buddha is trying to take us in, and Geshe is trying to take, and the Dalai Lama is trying to take us in, is to find those wholesome aspects within ourselves, the really good stuff, and grow it. And so they're called positive states of mind, wholesome states of mind, virtues, and they're defined as always being a root cause of well-being and happiness. And we've all got both. We've got the negative states, we've got the positive states. We've all got all of them, and so we can nurture. So things like developing anything to do with good heart, with kindness, engaging people with love, engaging people with compassion, and learning how to listen to people, having the respect where we can actually step back and where are they coming from, you know, having patience. They've got a different view from me, but my take is just one take on reality. So I think that sort of thing. Any kindness, anything to do with wisdom, seeing the nature of reality, seeing impermanence, understanding my life's very short, and understanding everyone's life's very short is precious. Having that wisdom, or even deeper wisdom about the nature of, it's called the emptiness nature of all things, which actually cuts the root of suffering. But I won't talk about that now. Having faith in things that are actually good, like if I do this kind act, realizing it's not just finished there. You've established a habit, start to establish a habit in your own mind. You've established a positive karma that will ripen in future lives. You're building happiness. When you've given this bird some bread, or you've given a homeless person a couple of bucks, it's not just finished there. From a Buddhist viewpoint, it's a very powerful thing, particularly if you start to build your motivation so it incorporates other beings. And so we can see in our own lives, you look at any time you've genuinely had good heart towards someone. So you haven't given someone because you want something back, but you've actually, through love or compassion, you've done something for someone else. And it's a wonderful experience, When your mind's been calm and concentrated, how good is that experience compared to the usual agitation and too much thinking? When you get deeper within yourself, and the mind calms down. So we can instinctively know positive are good, they're happiness building, they're good for me, they're good for everyone else. It's a sort of a no-brainer. But we still engage the world with delusion and run towards suffering. So the main practice to change that, it was to sort of the part of Enlightenment talks about the wisdom of listening, then developing the wisdom of thinking, and then the wisdom of concentration or meditation. So the way we overcome our suffering is to overcome the causes of suffering, our delusions, and cultivate the causes of happiness. And the way we do that is through listening or reading and acquainting our mind with these sorts of ideas. And then through thinking about them, like I said at the beginning, don't accept them, pull them apart, get to know in your own heart that what is really useful for you. And then through the wisdom of concentration or meditation, then practicing it and step by step building a happy life, and step by step an entire path to enlightenment, lifetime after lifetime towards enlightenment. So that's the idea. That's called the path to cessation. So the Buddha said the Four Noble Truths. There's this truth of suffering, and we've got birth and aging, sickness, death, getting depressed, meeting unpleasant. We suffer, like everyone does. And then we've got the cause, which is the root cause is these delusions, and the actions we make based. When I get angry, I harm someone, creates a negative karma, creates a strong habit. So that's the cause of suffering. And then the cessation of that suffering, the Buddha said, this thing is possible. There's this thing called Nirvana Liberation, which is actually a liberation within, from one's own mind, from ignorance and from delusion. And then there's actually beyond that, there's this state called enlightenment. You've fully developed your good heart. You've fully developed your wisdom. You've cut the root of ignorance, which is particularly how we see ourselves, how we grasp onto this I, and we don't quite understand what I is. But this very strong, if you get hurt, this very strong sense of I comes up, and we grasp onto that, we defend it, and we need this thing for this I, then realizing the I doesn't quite exist the way it appears, realizing emptiness or selflessness. Then at that point, we're heading towards enlightenment. And it said the enlightened experience is just it's unfathomable. Can't even say the word. It's very good. It's a state of complete bliss and peace beyond all ignorance, beyond suffering, immense capability to benefit others. And we can get a taste of that. If you develop your patience a bit, then you're better placed to help others. If you develop your compassion a bit, you're better placed in life to help others. So imagine if you fully developed it, there's actually no limit. Then how well placed are you to help others? If you completely overcome anger, so nothing perturbs you, nothing frightens you, no experience, then how well placed are we to help others? So that's sort of the idea of enlightenment. And meditation is defined as thoroughly and deeply acquainting the mind with virtue. So we go within, and we're not just quickly flipping through the ideas, we're acquainting, steeping our mind in it. So we'll try and practice a bit of meditation now. I've gone too far and I haven't actually covered. I did wanted to talk a bit about the benefits of meditation in this life in terms of health and body and so on. But I think it's better we do some meditation. So we'll do a bit of meditation on good heart, as that's said to be the key for developing merit. So again, sitting in meditation posture and just focusing on your breath. So bringing the mind back to a neutral state and focusing on the breath. Just the sensation of the breath, nothing else. Focus on your own wish, your fundamental wish for peace and for happiness. Identify that, because it drives your life, your wish for happiness. And see it's an innermost part of you. And we can imagine, just imagine you could actually have enduring peace and well-being and happiness. Imagine what that would be like. And then we can develop love for oneself. Just thinking, may I develop peace and happiness. And stabilize on that wish. We can extend that to everyone we know. And recognize they have that same underlying fundamental wish or need. They all need. So we can develop love for everyone we know. With a simple thought, may they attain happiness, enduring happiness and peace. And stabilize your mind on that heartfelt wish. And extend out to all human beings, everyone, including everyone we don't know. People in Ukraine, people in Russia, in the US, China, people in Africa, South America, and so on. Recognizing all human beings have the same wish as myself. It's the most important thing in their lives, just like me. We develop the heartfelt wish by all humans experience happiness and all its causes. We expand our heart out even further. Consider animals have suffering. All living beings experience suffering. So we develop the extraordinary mind of great love, enduring happiness. And finally, we can dedicate the merit, the positive energy of the meditation towards the peace, the well-being, and the happiness, and the eventual enlightenment of all living beings without exception. And we can finish the meditation. So it's time for questions. If anyone's got any questions, then we're welcome. Anyone online? Do they take a time to come through? Yeah. We'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if there's any questions come through. So then any of those meditations where we incorporate all living beings, trying to develop great love or great compassion, or what's called bodhicitta, then it's a cause of enormous merit within one's own mind stream. So incredibly powerful, positive sort of conditioning of our internal environment, and having a beneficial effect, not just this life, but into the future. So, yeah, it's worth turning the smartphone off. I can't remember the number, but I think we look at our smartphone something like 2,000 times a day. People touch their phone, adjust their phone. It's like continual. That's why maybe concentration is getting harder to develop. We're so used to having something flick through our minds continuously. No questions, Manny? No questions, okay. Is there tea being served, Angel? There is, yeah. Okay, so for people here, there's tea and coffee up the back, and thanks very much for everyone for coming. Next week we'll be looking at the section in this book on life, section on life, the perfect human rebirth. We'll be having a look at that. So thank you.